My brother and I have always shared a close bond, extending from childhood into adulthood. We spent many weekends together until he got married. Even after his marriage, I assumed everything was going well for him. But then I received a shocking message. I'm being accused of an affair I know nothing about, and they're demanding compensation in the divorce court. To my dismay, my sincere and dependable brother was being sued by his sister-in-law. I rushed to his house immediately. I'm Ava, a 31-year-old lawyer working at a prestigious firm. My path to becoming a lawyer wasn't smooth. Law school and bar exams were challenging, but I persevered and now lead a busy, fulfilling life. Each day brings new learning experiences, and that's something I embrace. In addition to my legal career, I'm passionate about gaming. When I can, I enjoy playing online games with my brother Samuel, who is 5 years older than me. Samuel has always been a pillar of support, especially during my college and bar exam days. Since Samuel's marriage last year, our gaming sessions have become less frequent. One relaxed weekend, I received a call from him. "Hey, do you have a moment? I need some advice." Given Samuel's usual reliability, I was taken aback but listened intently. "Lately, my wife's been acting strangely. She's out a lot and sometimes doesn't come home at all," Samuel said, referring to his wife, Charlotte. He mentioned that she often wasn't home when he returned from work and occasionally didn't return at all without any notice. I'd only met Charlotte once at their wedding, so I didn't know her well, but she seemed friendly from our brief encounters. Samuel's concerns were unsettling. While it's not unusual for someone to stay out late or go out, frequent absences can be worrisome. If there's trouble in the relationship or potential infidelity, it's important to address it. That's why Samuel turned to me, seeking legal advice on possible actions. From a legal standpoint, action can't be taken without concrete evidence. Moreover, involving a lawyer isn't always the most amicable solution, especially without proof against his wife. Since I didn't have a full understanding of the situation, I decided it was best not to get involved just yet. "I understand why you're anxious," I said, "but without more information, it's hard to make any conclusions. She might just be enjoying herself. If you really want to get to the bottom of this, our firm is partnered with a detective agency. I can introduce you if you'd like." For now, my options were limited, but if Samuel was genuinely concerned, hiring a detective might be a prudent next step. "A detective, huh?" Samuel said thoughtfully. "That's definitely an option. I'm swamped with work, so I can't investigate it myself. I'll think about it." His response was tentative, but I went ahead and sent the detective agency's contact details to his computer. "Let me know if you decide to move forward with them. I'll handle the arrangements on my end," I offered. "Thanks," Samuel said with a sigh before ending the call. His tone was noticeably dejected, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the situation was more serious than I'd initially thought. As days turned into weeks with no word from Samuel, I began to wonder whether he had been too busy or if things had calmed down with Charlotte. Concerned, I decided to check in. "Hey Samuel, how are things going? Any updates on the situation with Charlotte? I noticed you haven't reached out to the detective." I hoped Samuel's worries had turned out to be nothing, but his tone revealed otherwise. "It's not resolved," he said, sounding despondent. "I thought about hiring the detective, but Charlotte handles our finances, my salary, everything. I just can't afford the fees." Samuel's voice was heavy with frustration and helplessness. Despite considering the detective, his financial constraints had kept him from taking further action. "I understand. The cost of a detective can be quite high. It's a tough situation," I said, feeling a pang of sympathy for my brother. "All right, I'll help out. Let me see what I can do to assist you," I said. I felt a strong obligation to repay Samuel for all his past support and wanted to ease his worries, even if just a little. I told him I'd look into it and asked him to hang tight as I ended the call for the day. A few weeks later, I stumbled upon some troubling information about Charlotte. Just as I was about to share it with Samuel, he called me, sounding more frantic than ever. "Is everything okay? Something's come up," he said hurriedly. I braced myself for the worst. "Charlotte is threatening to sue me for alimony with false allegations of infidelity. She's even got a lawyer demanding compensation and warning that they'll proceed legally if I don't pay up." It seems Samuel was caught off guard by Charlotte's sudden and severe demands. He had called me during a break from a heated discussion with his lawyer. Hearing this, I was stunned. Samuel wasn't the type to cheat, and I knew he was completely innocent. That's why he's saying the accusations are fabricated. Charlotte is using a made-up affair as the basis for her claims. Samuel is genuinely a good person who treats everyone with kindness. Having seen my fair share of scams and frauds in my line of work, I was deeply worried about Samuel. I never imagined that the deception would come from his own spouse. So what's the current situation? What's the other side arguing? I mean, Samuel isn't having an affair, so this claim seems pretty far-fetched. With Samuel receiving the call in the middle of our conversation, I wasn't sure when he'd be able to get back to me. I needed to gather as much information as possible in the limited time we had, so I pressed him for details. Samuel revealed that someone had taken a photo of him during a business meeting with a female colleague, and now they were using it as supposed evidence of an affair. The photo showed both of them dressed professionally, in a completely innocuous setting. It was clear that they were trying to manipulate the situation to falsely frame Samuel. At this point, a few things about the opposing lawyer's approach struck me as unusual. As a legal professional, a lawyer's primary responsibility is to serve their client's best interests. If their client were genuinely having an affair, the lawyer would focus on reducing the compensation in the divorce trial. Conversely, if their client were the victim, the lawyer would seek to claim the maximum compensation. But demanding compensation based on such flimsy evidence was highly suspicious. A competent lawyer wouldn't make such unreasonable demands. It suggested either incompetence or something more sinister. Accepting such absurd requests could set a dangerous precedent, allowing anyone to make wild compensation claims. As Samuel's family, I couldn't just stand by. Samuel, I'm coming over right now. Don't respond to anything they say until I get there. Just hold tight and wait for me. I decided to step in as Samuel's lawyer and address the situation with Charlotte and her lawyer. I quickly changed from my casual clothes into a suit, shifting into work mode. I called a taxi and headed to Samuel's house as quickly as possible. Upon arriving, I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Samuel answered and welcomed me inside. As I walked into the living room, I found Charlotte sitting beside a man who looked like her lawyer. Both of them looked up in surprise at my arrival. Sister-in-law, it's been a while. I greeted Charlotte briefly before turning to the man beside her. Nice to meet you. I'm Ava, an attorney. I'm here today representing Samuel. Charlotte and her lawyer both looked taken aback. What? Ava, a lawyer? You're kidding, right? Charlotte said, her voice laced with surprise as she exchanged a quick, puzzled glance with her attorney. It was understandable, she was clearly unaware of my legal background. I had been approached for free consultations before, and there had been some behind-the-scenes talk about me that had led to past complications. I rarely share details about my profession outside of close friends and family, including relatives. Samuel respected my privacy and never mentioned my job to Charlotte, which likely explained her surprise at seeing me as a lawyer. Since Charlotte controls Samuel's income, he wouldn't ordinarily have the means to hire legal representation, perhaps leading her to believe he'd be defenseless and take advantage of the situation. Seated with Charlotte was her supposed lawyer. As I considered my next move, the lawyer spoke up. I don't care if you're a lawyer or not. Your brother cheated. He should obviously pay compensation. Charlotte nodded in agreement beside him. Did they genuinely believe they could win compensation in a divorce case with such flimsy claims? What evidence do you have of this alleged affair? I asked, skeptical of their claims. Samuel had always been faithful, and I wanted to see if they had anything beyond what he'd already shared with me. He was having dinner with another woman. That's solid proof. We'll settle for $50,000. You wouldn't want this getting out to family or his workplace, would you? The lawyer's words felt more like a threat than a genuine claim. I almost chuckled at the absurdity of demanding $50,000 based on such weak evidence. His bold and unreasonable stance only made the situation seem more farcical. By this point, my suspicions were confirmed. This attorney might be a fraud. Despite presenting himself as a lawyer, he had resorted to what seemed like intimidation tactics against Samuel. Initially, I suspected he might be a corrupt lawyer, but even with a genuine attorney like me present, his statements were more characteristic of someone trying to bluff rather than a real legal professional. Demanding $50,000 based on a simple public meeting was preposterous. Being in a suit in broad daylight in a public place doesn't prove infidelity. Real evidence of misconduct is required. Any legitimate attorney would understand this. I understand your concerns, I said, maintaining my composure. However, if we're to proceed, I need to verify your credentials. Could you provide your attorney license number and full name? Additionally, please share the name of your firm so I can follow up and arrange a formal meeting. I pressed him for his credentials, expecting him to falter. I can't quite recall my license number at the moment. I must have forgotten. You should contact my wife to set up an appointment, he stammered. Forgetting one's own license number is highly unusual for a genuine lawyer, suggesting he was trying to evade the situation. You're only saying that because you're not a real lawyer, I asserted, hitting the mark. He looked taken aback and tried to counter. What are you talking about? That's absurd. I could sue you for defamation, he threatened. If he were truly capable, I wish he would follow through. I couldn't help but laugh. If you're a legitimate attorney, prove it. A trustworthy lawyer wouldn't hide their identity, and a real lawyer wouldn't threaten legal action over such a trivial matter, I said with a smirk, leaving him at a loss for words. The situation had clearly shifted. Charlotte and the imposter attorney looked visibly defeated. The power dynamic was now in my hands. Mr. Fake Attorney, isn't your real name Logan, Charlotte's former classmate? I believe you work in sales, don't you? The shock on both their faces was palpable. Samuel, who had been quietly observing beside me, stared at me in astonishment. You're not a real attorney. You're actually Charlotte's affair partner. It wasn't Samuel who was unfaithful. It was the two of you, wasn't it? I pressed. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed my revelations. The appearance of an attorney who seemed to know all the details must have been startling. I had been consulted by Samuel and, learning that he couldn't afford an investigation, took matters into my own hands. I couldn't stand seeing Samuel so distressed. My investigation revealed the affair, and I had gathered detailed information about Charlotte's partner, including his identity. Arriving at Samuel's house, I was taken aback to find Charlotte with a man who turned out to be Logan, her affair partner, posing as her lawyer. I have plenty of evidence of the affair, I said confidently. If you continue with these false claims, you and your partner will be the ones facing consequences. So, are you still planning to pursue compensation from Samuel? I asked. Upon hearing my question, both Charlotte and Logan silently shook their heads in defeat. I'm so sorry. I never intended for any of this to happen. Please forgive me, Charlotte said, her tone now filled with remorse and apology. It seemed that the reality of facing consequences was starting to sink in. Logan, observing Charlotte's change in demeanor, gave a slight nod in agreement. Charlotte began to explain the situation. Logan had proposed marriage, and she had been receptive to the idea. They decided to fabricate an affair to prompt a divorce with the added incentive of seeking compensation money. It's astounding that someone could even conceive, let alone execute, such a scheme. Samuel, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke up. You betray someone and then try to frame them for a crime. You think a simple apology will fix this? I trusted you as my wife, and now you must face the consequences of your actions. Samuel's calm voice carried an undercurrent of anger. He was right, no apology could undo the deceit. Claiming to be a lawyer without a license is a serious crime. You could face jail time or hefty fines. And Logan, you're implicated too. There's no escaping this, I added. Their faces went pale as they absorbed the gravity of the situation. Charlotte, now frantic, pleaded, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I didn't know. I truly apologize. Logan stood up, his face etched with regret, and began to apologize profusely as well. I'm truly sorry. We didn't think it through. Please forgive us. Their desperate apologies stood in stark contrast to their earlier demands. I don't care what happens to you two. I'm reporting this, Samuel declared firmly. It's often said that the kindest people have the fiercest anger. Without another glance at the apologizing pair, Samuel moved forward to file his report. Please, court, just give us a chance. Spare us, they pleaded. Samuel, however, remained resolute and called the authorities. Both Charlotte and Logan were ultimately arrested and faced prison time. Samuel and Charlotte's marriage was dissolved, and the compensation from the divorce settlement helped address other financial matters. They agreed to sever all future ties. Charlotte, left defenseless and in tears, faced the consequences of her actions. Their attempts to deceive and falsely accuse had only led to their own downfall. While regretting their choices was too late, perhaps they would find a path to change for the better. After the divorce, Samuel began to reclaim his old self. Since getting married, Samuel and I had enjoyed online gaming together, a hobby he had put on hold. With a divorce behind him, Samuel moved out of their shared home and started fresh in a new place. Initially, he seemed distrustful and kept his distance from others, but recently, he's begun to venture out more, enjoying meals with friends. Once Samuel feels more settled, I plan to introduce him to some of my reliable friends. More than anything, I hope Samuel can find happiness again after all he's endured.